on, so we're good.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you. Let's rise to the flag salute. Good morning, everyone. Lindsay, good morning. Nice to see you here. Okay, ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Okay, are there any modifications to the agenda?
I
think we have. Oh, call us in.
Sorry about that.
I came in hot, sorry.
Let's see, Secretary Halverson is absent this morning. Member Holmes?
Present.
Thank you. Chairman Lewis?
Here.
Thank you. Member Martell is also absent. Member Siegel?
Is here.
Thank you. And Member Sutherland?
Here.
Excellent. We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Martell is at an International City Management Association meeting. She serves as a Deputy Executive Director. And Mr. Halverson had a previous cruise plan, as we knew. Just kidding. Heck with him.
He's not living past
Darn guy. All right, thank you. We'll move on to public comment. This is the time and place for members of the public to comment on any item not on the agenda, as this is a regular meeting. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on items not?
Sorry, can we back up to the modifications because Liz interrupted and I do have a request for a
I
modification.
thought you did.
I do have it. Well, then we went to
On LCAP, right?
roll call. Yeah, I would just like to move my executive director report to before the LCAP presentation because there's things in my ED report that you need to know that.
So after the North Bay update, you'd be item 2.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, is there any objection from a board member to moving the executive director report to item 2?
No.
None.
Okay, then, so ordered. We'll move it to item 2. Thank you, Ms. Gaskell. Okay, then I'll ask again for any member of the public wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda, as this is a regular meeting, not on the agenda. Anyone online? Ms. Joy?
I'm seeing none in the chat.
Okay, before we get to the agenda, I will just share that I've had the pleasure to go to 2 of our graduations, and it has been wonderful. So, as you know, I'm just finishing my job as city manager of Pismo Beach and becoming city manager of my hometown, which is wonderful. So I have a month that I've been able to executive coach and work on the recruitment, have some more time. So I was able to go to the graduations in Riverside and San Diego, and they were wonderful. It just reminds me of the good work we're doing. And San Marcos is a beautiful community. I was reminded, wow, I spent the day there yesterday, and just incredible students, incredible families, and it reminds me why we do what we do. So it was just terrific. So I wanted to have a point of privilege to say, I know you're attending a graduation, OJ, this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Tuesday.
Thank you. It's wonderful. When you hand out the diplomas and shake the kids' hands, it's just incredible.
Yep.
Absolutely incredible. Okay, so we'll move on to our next item, which is reports from Liz first, our financial report, correct?
North Bay.
Oh, sorry, the agenda disappeared from me. I have to pull it up.
I was queuing it up.
Our North Bay wonderful team is over on the left.
Yep. And
Share with us
remember-
all of the wonderful things that are happening.
So we've compiled a little presentation for you guys outlining what we've done over this school year here, as well as some student testimonials about what the most important thing about going to Pivot is and what their favorite thing about attending Pivot is. So without further ado, here it is.
Great. Gonna beat Riverside.
All right, Brenda. So what does it mean to be a Pivot student?
I like it here because we still do the same amount of schoolwork, just we do 3 hours and we get help. And there are no problems here. And you could just ask for help and they just help you.
And what is your favorite thing about going to Pivot?
I like that we each have our own desk and it's quiet here and we go on field trips every month.
course, they don't love the unreliable internet.
Right. We pay our bill, Liz? Typing here.
You paid them to not say that.
Let's see.
All right, Brenda. So what does it mean to be a
Yep, it's just this slide for some reason.
Okay, Jacob. So what does it mean to be a pivot student?
To be a pivot student for me is having the ability to be like successful. Pivot opens up a lot of opportunities for people that you might not get in like a conventional school. I think being a pivot student also
Awesome. Travis, do you want to talk about the,
Yeah.
does someone want to talk about the Pivot Pride stickers that are on our table here?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. That is a new program that we're kind of launching that has some SEL components, some behavior expectations called Pivot Pride. So each letter of Pride stands for a core belief for students at Pivot. And
SEL being social emotional learning.
social emotional learning, yeah. So like perseverance, readiness, integrity. Something else I have to remember the last one.
Oh, yeah, we got the spot. I'm sorry, Abigail.
Dedication, maybe, and excellence. Yeah, excellence is the last one. So yeah, there's kind of behavior expectations, but also just building community. And every school is having a Pivot Pride event at the end of the year. They've been earning tickets at our homerooms on Fridays. So these are some of the games that we're going to have at our field day. Students-
Love it.
Yeah, they've earned tickets throughout the year to play these games. And I think pie teachers in the face too, with
Yep.
cream pies.
Yep.
So,
Really? Well, that'd be
Nice.
wonderful for
so
this.
they've been very motivated, and yeah, it's been great. It was launched by Kristen, our MTSS director, and Brenda, our intervention specialist, along with our counselors as well.
Thanks.
So,
You
yeah,
want to,
Miguel's
Travis,
great.
you want to talk about the games? Who made them?
Yeah, I actually made all of these carnival games here for the field day that we're having at our final day of on-site. The kids are gonna have an opportunity to win some tickets and win some prizes. We're gonna hand out some t-shirts, pivot gear, and just kind of celebrate all their hard work that they've done for the entirety of the school year.
It's awesome. Thank you for building those.
As we finish the school year, tell us about the just general attitude and culture of the students as we're wrapping up. The board would like to hear about that.
Yeah, I think we talk about a lot how the last few years we've really had to take them one at a time coming out of COVID. And for some reason this spring really feels like energy is coming back. We've been able to do so many things, so many more things with students this year than the last 2 years because of different restrictions that we've had in place. So that's what I'm definitely feeling is, more kids on campus, more kids participating in field trips. And we're coming out with a really strong virtual program because we had to make that stronger. And so now all the things in person that we're doing feel really energetic and meaningful. And so I think that's kind of what the end of the year is feeling.
Thank you. Ms. Gaskell, anything else on report from North Bay?
Loving it. As you know, Travis is going to be the site administrator here next year as Abigail hopefully takes on her new role that will be official once you approve the budget in 2 weeks. So really appreciate Travis has already kind of taken the reins, and we appreciate that. And the turnover from Abigail and Travis has been really, really smooth. So
Thank you to you both. We really appreciate it. I understand from Ms. Gaskell that is working very well. So it's wonderful. Okay, we'll move on to your report.
awesome. Well, speaking of North Bay, but more specifically to new roles, I do want to introduce you to Jasmine. Jasmine is a new face at whom you have not met yet. Jasmine had started off at the North Bay as the enrollment data clerk, basically entering all of our applications in. And then Lindsay quickly started mentoring her and realizing that she is really, really good at lots of data stuff and problem solving and figuring out our student information system. And Lindsay has spent the last 2 months turning many of her data tasks over to Jasmine. And Jasmine has not just been learning what Lindsay did, but she's also going off on her own and learning new things and teaching us things and bringing new things to the table as well. So I did want to introduce Jasmine. And so you will be seeing her and hearing from her in the future quite a bit. As you know, Lindsay did a lot of our data and Jasmine will be doing that. So she's already diving in, and I introduced her to Dr. Campbell because renewal data is really important. So,
And Lindsay, thank you. I understand that day by day you have been 110% invested and helped with the transition, and it's very professional, and we're very grateful.
Yes, that was my next comment was to thank. No, it's okay. No, because you and I talked about it, so I'd rather it come from you. To be honest, I say it to Lindsay every day. To have the privilege of having Lindsay be able to, turn things over and train people that will be doing the task that she did has been amazing, and she just did it in an incredible way. So we do appreciate that, Lindsay. And this will be your last board meeting.
It's my last board meeting.
So I know.
I did my hair extra special. Hope it looks okay.
So
Wow.
as promised,
Here they are.
board members, thank you, Brittany, for bringing them. These are.
Look at these.
Yeah.
These are, by the way, I've been to several of the sites this week, prominently displayed
Thank you.
by our faculty and staff. They love
My
these.
daughter,
These are our service pennants.
yes.
These are your service pins.
And the board didn't get one, but the staff did.
Like, wait a minute.
We're like,
I started this thing.
What's
I should
going
have
on?
known.
You do have the most.
Yeah.
Look at that.
That's
Look at
really
that.
And we will get you hats
You
and
probably had to make one just for me.
tongs.
2009. Nobody has that.
It was a very expensive.
You wouldn't
one.
approve it.
Nobody asked for it.
The chief business officer, founder's pen, scratched it.
Right?
Not in the
Like, look
budget.
at yours, something like
Not
that.
in the budget. Look at this. I mean,
Oh,
I'm sorry for getting to
it's
it.
okay. It's great. I wanted to make sure you got
Those are
one.
wonderful.
So you get one.
Yeah,
You
you got one of those?
you get the
No,
individual
okay.
ones, and then you have the 5s and the 10s.
Well, if we
And
reelect
then
you
the
today, you might
and
get
then
10.
the 15s. You will have a 15 in
Oh
2
my,
years.
Woo.
wow.
And a big thanks to Nicole for putting them all together.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will cherish that.
And at all the sites, they really do have them out.
They're out.
So, great.
That's fun.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to talk about enrollment and re-enrollment, and I have a new update. Actually, since you're on, Abigail, will you pull up your email just to update with the numbers? Because I put it in my presentation as an update, but Liz is using my original one.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. No big deal. We have it. We'll talk about a little bit of a legislative update, and some new terms, some new alphabet soups, and I will define them for you. I just didn't want to fit them on the slide.
That's not crime scene investigation.
No, it is not. No, it is not.
That's my world. Sorry.
But you do know Abigail's new title of Director of Curriculum Instruction Assessment is Director of
CIA.
CIA.
Yes.
So I just thought that was funny. Liz came up with that one. So some new terms that you need to learn about so that you know what we're dealing with, and that's why I wanted to move this presentation, because it will also be reflected in the LCAP about the CSI and the ATSI. Okay. All right, re-enrollment. I'm not going to read it to you. Keep going.
Did you put the new one in board docs? You want me to pop it up?
No, I didn't put it in board docs. I just did it last night. So. That's okay. Pivot Riverside re-enrollment's at 76.7%. And then North Bay is at 60%. This was a week ago. 61% at North Valley, and that's of eligible.
That's higher, isn't it?
It is now
Yeah,
with the update.
Right.
All of the schools are higher. And then the overall, again, this was a week ago, and I'm going to ask Abigail to rattle off the new numbers because this re-enrollment number has gone up to 70, what percent? 70?
79 when you take into account graduates and some others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Re-enroll.
And we are, as far as overall enrollment at all 4 schools, we are higher than last year, but I don't want to use last year as the metrics, and we've discussed this. And at 2 years ago, at this point in time, with the latest, greatest numbers, basically. So we're up to, what's our total enrollment now with the new numbers just last week? 530. Okay, and Jasmine is the one who supplies us with those numbers and pulls those now, as she has learned how to do that from Lindsay, and we get those weekly reports. So, so I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, just some of the things that we did to try to boost re-enrollment. We started our online marketing campaign earlier this year for new enrollment. Jasmine has been working with, and so is Lindsay, with the enrollment team, and I'm trying, my mantra for the end of this year and next year is streamlining. And so we've been working together on streamlining some of our enrollment processes to get kids in quicker, even doing what we call enrollment days, because we've moved to the online registration. We've always had access to online registration, but if more families would do it, it would take a lot of extra steps out of our staff's processes. So some of our families struggle with that. The online reg. So we have 2 days a week. One is in English, one is in Spanish, where the families come and we set up Chromebooks, and this is plugged in here and at the other sites when they need it. And we literally walk them through the online registration process. So again, trying to streamline things so we don't have double data entry, and we're working some of the kinks out right now. But for example, we have 52 students that are in the online reg portal right now that haven't been downloaded for Pivot North Bay alone. So these numbers do not reflect that, and I need it to reflect it a little bit more live. So we're working on that. So. All right. Any questions about enrollment before we move on? Okay. All right. Update to the update already. This legislation, SB 739, was passed on Tuesday night. The House had passed it, or the
Assembly,
thank you, had passed it last week, and then the Senate passed it Tuesday night. I'm a little surprised, given I think we got more moderate Dems in there this year, from what I understand from staying in touch with the people who know. And it is true, the intent of this legislation was, do we have enough data, given the hold on the data that is required under the new legislation for our authorizers to determine whether or not we are renewable, and there just wasn't enough data. So I think what was also happening with school districts authorizers were also kind of complaining, like, look, there's no there. What am I supposed to use?
this is the green, yellow, red, the whole.
The dashboard, everything. Right. So given that San Diego is so small, Pivot San Diego, the green, yellow, red really won't change a lot a year from now. So Dr. Campbell and I discussed this while she was visiting, and we're going to move forward with the renewal with Pivot San Diego for this fall. So for lots and lots of reasons that you can ask me about some of it. But Dr. Campbell and I are in agreement on that as with the district. So it's nice to work with our authorizers. So, but it passed, but we're going to move forward. And we have the data that we need, that they need. And that's the most important part. So any questions on that? Okay. I'm not going to read this to you, but it's there so you can learn. So disproportionality is a terminology in special education. And basically, if you go to the next slide, Liz, Pivot North Valley is disproportionate to the number of white students who qualify for a specific learning disability compared to the state. And by default, that means there's not enough students of color or, you know, socioeconomically disadvantaged that are qualifying for special education. Therefore, if we have this red flag of disproportionality, we have 92,000 pages of reports that we have to produce to the feds and the Department of Education. And they even give us consultants. They pay for our consultants to sort of, it's like a little bit, I know,
10 hours.
to teach us. So I am just getting up to speed on this. We have the first phase of the 92,000 pages is due June 30th. Our outgoing director of special education is working.
Is this related to the demographics of the area?
No.
No.
They do not take into account what Chico looks like. That is not, it's just against the state. So that's the comparison. So even the consultant, and we're only talking about a 100-student school, right?
That's the
they
challenge.
are
Is so
but they are
small.
closest to 30% special ed. So those numbers are
Because our
higher.
school is very diverse, very special ed, very focused on school lunch. I mean,
Yes, low socioeconomic,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right.
So,
huh.
yeah, go ahead.
It's too small. So
Yes,
normally
exactly.
within
That's
the
the
school,
problem.
your groups would be compared to each other.
Yes.
But we only have one group, and it's white specific learning disability that has enough
I
students
see.
to be counted as a group. So if you don't have other groups to compare within your own
That's all you got.
organization, it gets compared to the state.
So,
Okay.
you know, North Bay probably will never qualify for disproportionality.
No.
Actually, either will San Marcos or Riverside, I don't think. So
And this is federal, not.
it is federal, but it's
Is
also state.
It's also.
Yeah. It's
But
also
because
state.
we receive
Because
federal
it's
money, this is one of the things that we talked about comes into play, right? With federal dollars.
Yeah, not this one, but the
Oh,
next
the
ones.
next one,
The next
okay.
ones. The CSI and the ATSI is because of us accepting federal funds. This is just special education. So Brooke Van Arsdale, I know you guys met Steve Tom and Jim met James McElroy, our new director of special ed. Brooke is moving this week, but she's going to come back and she's just going to focus on this with me. So because we got to get this done by June 30th. It's huge. But so one of the things that it is required, actually, I think it's more of a best practice. It's not really required. We couldn't find anywhere where it was required, but they do want us to make sure that our governing entity understands that we qualified and what we qualified under, and that we did it at a public session so that the public can ask questions about it. Again, it's not required, but it is best practices.
Any questions on this? Interesting. So I think what's more important for the board to understand is we're disproportionate based on the general demographics of the area or based on
The
something
state
we're
law.
not.
Our own students and our one little subgroup of white kids that
So,
qualify.
my question is then, that's just what we are?
We're never going to get out of it, is what the consultant said. She said.
Well, I
"You're
think the
just-"
board needs to understand that, right?
Yeah.
Are we missing a needed population?
No, so one of the things, go forward, yeah. So these are the things that and I summarized it obviously, what we need to do. We have to look at our own data, make sure that we are not disproportionately qualifying more white kids. We need to conduct an infrastructure analysis to make sure that all of our policies and procedures are solid and also not causing disproportionality, and how we assess kids, how we refer kids for assessment. All of that needs to be reviewed, and we have to, I have to write reports. Brooke is doing some of the other stuff, the practices and policies and the many reports. We got the consultant. She already did with Travis Bennett up in North Valley. They did. What did they call them? Basically, getting our families together to talk about it and to have them give feedback about why we might qualify disproportionately in Chico. I think 2 parents showed, I think. So 2 of our special education parents and none of our general ed parents. And it's because we asked those 2 parents to come. So, and the consultant was there and, helping to lead it. So, and she said, literally, this is insane. And something has to change for these. And I know that the Small School Districts Association, SSDA, to what we belong to that. Tim Taylor is the executive director of that. He's the former superintendent of Butte County Office of Ed. This is a big one for him because his small school districts are also facing the same kind of thing. So it's a topic for SSDA as well. But it's a federal thing. So I doubt we're ever going to be able to change it.
So just so I understand, we're at North Valley, we have a higher percentage of white students who are learning disabled compared to the state. Correct. So the only way to get out of disproportionality is to grow the number of students who are not learning disabled.
And not
North
white.
Valley, and not.
Qualifying other students, but we don't have a big enough subgroup of other students because of the local demographics.
Okay.
So we're kind of stuck.
What are the consequences of being disproportionate?
This is it. I have to write these
Oh,
diagrams
92,000
every
pages.
year. Yes. And explain to them and show
Why?
them that we are doing our due diligence, which you know we are, so I don't need to make light of this.
We
will-
put a lot of
No.
effort into non-English learners
Yes.
marketing too. Even.
Absolutely. We have bus stops in
Yeah,
Chico
right.
that are in Spanish. We are outreach to the churches, the farmers market that
Right.
has a Hispanic end of the farmers
Mhm.
market. We put our little table there.
Mhm.
You know, it's we get a lot more traction obviously in Santa Rosa and Corona with our EL students. But as you will see in a little bit on the other things we qualify for. So yes. So any questions? Because that's the most important part, is that you understand that this is going to be an ongoing cycle of reflection and report writing.
Is there anybody who can look at your 92,000 pages and say, no, this is not acceptable? Who's
No.
going to read this?
No, there's not anyone that can say, no, you're out.
This kills me.
You, and now, obviously, we could, in theory, get out from disproportionality, but at North Valley, we're not going to.
Correct.
If there were big things we could be doing, we'd be doing them already to avoid this, right? But it's just the demographics of the community and the smallness of our school and the smallness of our sample size. You know, and maybe I will stumble across something as I'm, you know, it's just yeah.
Okay. Well.
So, would you like to add anything to this, Dr. Campbell?
Do you have the situation, Dr. Campbell?
What I will say that what Jana is saying is absolutely true. San Marcos was in disproportionality 2 years ago, also for white students. Ours was for white students entering into NPSs.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that was a thing. Oh,
It's
I
a
gotta
thing.
look out for that.
Yes, it's a thing. Ours was a data mistake. Even though it was a data mistake and the feds recognized that it was a data mistake, they still kept us in. So when she says you likely are not getting out, there is no
There's no out.
there is no
Once
out.
you're in.
There is no
Do not pass
movement.
go, do not
With
Yes.
our
pass
superintendent
$100.
colleague. There you go.
Yes.
So, so if I don't respond to you right away after graduations are
You're working
I will
on
be
it.
sharpening your
Your
pencils.
pencils?
At least you have a colleague you can call on.
And we will talk about how much assistance we might need moving into the new school year on this, because I can't be doing all this by myself, and you probably want your director of special ed focused on real issues in special education and not this. So, do you smell a consulting contract coming up?
That's not an executive director that's frustrated.
So, no, I can fix it with a consulting contract. No, I don't know what it's going to take. I need to get up to speed with, I'm up to speed with what it takes right now until June 30th, but there's more to come that we have to submit in the future, and I need to get up to speed on that. I'm not, I need to admit that. So, questions? All right. Okay, more fun alphabet soups and numbers, and all right. This is because we take federal monies, because we didn't used to. Remember, we talked about there's pros and cons to taking the extra federal monies, and you're on their radar, and they all say, if you're taking our monies, we're going to be data smashing, and you are going to qualify and have to jump through some hoops. Okay, we talked about that. Liz warned us right and left, but we got to the point where we had so many students that it was a good chunk of change. So it was a very good chunk of change. Yes, CDO? Yes. All right. So CSI, Comprehensive Support and Improvement Status. based on school-wide performance of all students. ATSI is for groups of students, specific groups of students. So one of two ways to qualify: low graduation rate and low performance based on the dashboard. Low graduation rate consists of schools that have a 3-year graduation rate. This is just her world. Now it is her world, and understanding, exactly how they crunch this. There's a manual this thick. A technical manual about how they come up with all of these numbers that Lindsay has memorized over the years.
You're really high on the government right now.
Yeah.
Remember, I work in it.
Bureaucracy.
Be careful.
Bureaucracy.
Yeah, you're local.
I'm local government.
Yeah, you're local. Yeah.
You're
I cannot imagine you ever creating something like this.
Oh,
Jim.
no, we don't have
I
time for
cannot
this.
imagine.
We don't have staff or time.
And then CSI for low performing consists of schools that receive Title I funding for the 21-22 school year and are the lowest performing based on the 22 dashboard. This is not something we qualified for. This is what we qualified for. So next slide. Local education agencies with schools that meet criteria for CSI must collaborate with their educational partners. That word is now being used in lieu of constituents. So families and students and staff and local community members, people who are involved with serving our students. So when you see educational partners, that's everybody. That's staff and students and families and everybody. To locally develop and implement a plan to improve student outcomes. More plans. Pivot North Bay qualifies as a CSI school for the graduation rates that you saw on the other slide. Next, we're going to get into it in a little bit more detail. So, then ATSI, additional targeted support and improvement. It comes from the federal monies, from the ESSA monies, as you have read for many years. This keeps you up to date on ESSA monies. And there's TSI and ATSI. Again, it's schools with one or more students groups that are on its own, as opposed to school-wide, like the CSI. Lowest performing 5% of Title I schools. You get identified once every 3 years. So you're kind of on this 3-year cycle to improve. Schools that meet the criteria for ATSI must collaborate with educational partners to develop a plan. Plan number 3. This fall, this spring. And Pivot Riverside and Pivot San Diego qualify as ATSI for chronic absenteeism. Next slide. Yeah, we'll talk about it. We have to develop a school level plan to improve student outcomes. It must be based on indicators in the statewide accountability system, evidence-based interventions, and we need to identify resource inequities. And if you remember, we always do our survey with our families, like, what do you need? Right. We have the Khajiit hotspots so that they can actually get internet service at their homes. We loan out the Chromebooks. They can come here, obviously, printers, Liz, some of the physical things that they can get, but inequities also to access to intervention specialists, access to having things translated. We have to look at those inequities as well. So the difference between ATSI and CSI, again, is more about subgroups versus school-wide data. I'm just going to oversimplify it for you, but and in most cases, an ATSI school will not also be labeled as a CSI school. The hierarchy of qualifications is ATSI up here, and then it keeps going down. So an ATSI school will not be labeled as a CSI school because ATSI comes first on their hierarchy. So chronic absenteeism. Here's the math. Right? Pivot San Diego and Pivot Riverside are eligible for ATSI under chronic absenteeism for subgroups. Riverside, it's socioeconomically disadvantaged and Hispanic, and San Diego, I meant to put in here, sorry. And San Diego qualifies under for chronic absenteeism of socioeconomically disadvantaged. As you know, we're running. What are our percentages on? You actually sent it to me, and I'm thinking about Dr. Brenham on SED for San Diego and Riverside. Low 50s. That's what I thought. Yeah, and actually, I thought to have you do it ahead of time, but I didn't, and I printed them out. They're in my bag, but I figured we had people here who could tell me. So we're about, low 50s on socioeconomically disadvantaged students. So if they don't have, if they're not, if their attendance rates are not strong, they fall into a chronic absenteeism, which is, we were talking about this last night. You can chime in because you can say it a lot better than I can.
I would like to offer perspective on this.
Appreciate that.
Welcome to the club. All of the districts in San Diego County are in chronic absenteeism, ATSI chronic absenteeism. The state, they are looking at the absent rate for last year. And if you recall, last year we were coming out of COVID, and there were really from the state, they were telling us if students are sick, keep them home. We had there were requirements of if you have a sniffle, you have to stay home. We had 5 and 10 day quarantines that we were still putting students through. None of that was taken into consideration with the chronic absenteeism rate. So I will tell you, there are pitchforks in the state because literally every district is in ATSI.
Wow.
So absent is absent, whether it's excused or not.
Correct. There is no acceptable excused absence in the state of California that changes your attendance rates.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Correct. The only
Your
thing
perspective is
that's
very helpful. Thank you for being here. I mean, it's just
See,
a nice
I would have
kind of-
said it, but you didn't have to believe me. I heard it.
A doctor, traditional educator is very helpful to benchmark us. Thank you.
Yes.
So, next slide, real quickly here. So, here
I remember
is-
this awesome slide.
Yes.
The cell phone signal, but worse.
Yes.
You know what? I appreciate that you.
Yes. So 22.6% are chronically absent. The total number of students is 53. This is Riverside's absenteeism rate. And for Hispanic, and then 29.5% for socioeconomically disadvantaged.
And I think school-wide, we were at like 23 or something. So.
Yeah. So these numbers are higher. Or not quite, but San Diego socioeconomically disadvantaged group, 46.9% absenteeism rate. Number of students is 32. And let's go on to the state. This is the state's rates. They're way higher than us. Okay, I just want to point that out. Can we go back real quick? It's 35.8, right?
Go back one slide. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so this is Riverside's 22 and 29, San Diego's,
And
and then you compare it to.
But that is scary.
Yeah,
for
San
our kids.
Diego's is higher though. San Diego's is higher. So.
That is really a problem.
Well, and you heard, Dr. Campbell saying that we were supposed to keep kids home. Now, we're an independent study school, so the next slide talks a little bit about that, right?
Can I just interrupt?
Yes, absolutely.
Pre-COVID, what were generally the absentee rates?
That was my question. Yeah.
We,
You'll pull this up in about 30 seconds.
It's so this go there's 2 slides forward. I'll get you.
Yeah, okay.
Go
ahead.
I guess not. Somewhere in here, I point out, forget which slide. Yeah, so here we go, thank you. So attendance at an independent study school is based on engaging in learning on a day that school is in session, and as importantly, if not more importantly, work product being submitted, them actually doing something, doing an assignment that gets graded, that's submitted. Now, there are some things that they can do outside of the system that is still an educational activity, and we do track that as well, and we have a brand new system to do that, and so we are talking a little bit about that, hoping to increase it. But you have kids who are coming to us credit deficient. You have kids who are coming to us habitually truant. And that is one of the things we qualify for DOS, right? They were habitually truant in their past. DAS, whatever we call it. And we'll talk about that later. But so to get these kids, to turn them around, to pivot them, it takes a bit, to get them used to independent study. And they all come, it's going to be online. It's going to be really, really easy. But no, you're still held accountable for getting the dang work done. Algebra is algebra. Algebra's algebra. You still have to do it, right? So it's this constant struggle. And Travis and Abigail can chime in here on this as he sees. So it's part of the nature of independent study to some degree, but that's a bad excuse. That's a bad answer. Don't accept that answer from us. The teachers work really hard, really hard, and we try to put all the policies and everything into place to support them in getting the students to work and to work on school days. That was a change that was made during COVID. I won't
Yeah.
bore you with the details on that, but they have to do something every day the school's in session, as opposed to waiting till Friday and doing all of their algebra, right? And not doing something Monday through Thursday. So we were having to track all of that. And it affects, how the kids are working. So, so it's an interesting conundrum with independent
Is the
study.
attendance clerk a person, not a system?
It is
Our school district have a
person
system that calls you, it says your student was out of certificate.
And guess what? We do too, and that person is going to take care of that system.
But ours is like automated.
Yes, it will
That's
be automated.
Oh, it's automated. Okay, that's why it's
So
closed.
lots of changes to our systems. Abigail's been working on them with Lindsay and me and other folks. And I put the attendance clerk. It's actually program assistant and attendance clerk. If you remember the org chart, and I sent you a copy again the other day, the new org chart. That person will be a support to both our Director of Student Support Services, Kristen Poitras, and Abigail as Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. And one of the things they will be doing jointly is making sure that our kids are getting those phone calls, they're getting the robocalls, and getting a personal call. We don't have to have it. We're not a big school district. We can have personal phone calls happening, not just the robo texts and the emails, especially for the students who are falling into the chronically absent, right? The daily thing, your kiddo didn't do anything, right? So a bunch of changes have to happen because currently our teachers do track it on a daily basis because they're calling families all the time and emailing them and texting them, hey, your kiddo did log in, but it's not being entered into the system on a daily basis. And now they've improved the system and it will be entered in on a daily basis so those robocalls can go out. In the past, we waited to the end of the attendance month for us to have all of that calculated and all the attendance in. Now it's going to happen on a daily basis. They were tracking it daily anyway. So why not just do it in the system? Right, so that we can do the robocalls, we can do the robo texts and emails and whatnot. So some changes. So this is basically our responses, our plans to support the schools that are in ATSI. We will have we'll have everything translated because if you saw Riverside's the Hispanic group qualified. We'll have opportunities, there's a whole plan of things. We'll have opportunities for, we already have all of our MTSS, our multi-tiered system of support. Having the daily attendance kicking in is going to bring on MTSS support sooner. And so that will also help quite a bit. And this already happens, our SST meetings, our student support team meetings and our multi-tier system support meetings with all the families are on-site, face-to-face, translation services are available if needed. I think with COVID, it's been harder to get the families to come on-site and they sit down in front of the teacher. And correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of the times if your student is chronically absent or on MTSS, getting that parent in front of you is key, not just on a screen where they turn off their camera. So we can't require that they come to the school site, but we can highly encourage it and bug the heck out of them until they do get their butts here on campus with the kiddo. And, Abigail, you'll hear Abigail talking now and into the future about, we're referring to the team. Every student has a team, right? And that team is going to be there with their EL, if they have special ed services, if they are on MTSS, and their educational coordinator will be there, maybe their site administrator will be there. That team will be there with that family. And we're really going to push and expand that concept to get the families to make sure that they come. So that's part of our response, part of what's in our plan. These changes, to be honest with you, were already in the works with the teachers, with Abigail, Lindsay, the staff, the administrators. It was already in the works when we found out in mid-February of this year that we qualified for ATSI and CSI, which means that it didn't really get on our radars as charter schools because the list came out in mid-February and we kind of just started hearing about it. And because it had been on hold for so long, we really didn't wake up. I didn't wake up, and the emails started flying around between Liz and myself and Lindsay until like March. So we were already planning on making some of these changes, but it's also a very good response to what we qualified for. So, yes, thank you, Liz.
You skipped a couple slides.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to get to. So that is ATSI, chronic absenteeism, daily attendance, new attendance clerk, new way of using the system, new way of tracking attendance, really pushing forward this concept of the team coming together to support these kids, making the parents come to sit with the team and coming up with the plans. That's our plan, okay? And we are allowed to, as a charter school, this is why I moved my executive director report. We are allowed to, most school districts have a student plan for student achievement. What is it? School-wide plan for SIPSA. School-wide plan for student achievement.
Yes.
A SIPSA plan. It's the only report I don't have to put together. Knock on wood. But they don't. Districts have to. So their CSI and ATSI plans have to be in their SIPSA. They allow charter schools to put them in the LCAP. So that's why I had to move my executive director report before the LCAP, so you know what the heck you were looking at because you will see it in the LCAP.
Okay.
The CSI is allowed to be there. So let's move on to CSI. North Bay, are questions on chronic absenteeism and our plan? Okay. Graduation rates. North Bay qualifies as a CSI school for graduation rates of the school-wide. This is just part of the technical way that they crunch these numbers. North Bay graduation rate 62.4, and the state is at 87.4, and we're at 62. Now, also please take into account that we're getting kids that are,
Right.
credit deficient. That's
Yeah.
our goal. That's our mission in life.
We are trying to pivot the tough kids.
Yes.
This is what you're
So
gonna
we
see.
end up having lots of fifth-year seniors, right? Because they can't get, they're already coming credit deficient and not knowing how to be a student. And yes, we do pivot them and we save them, but sometimes it takes a little extra couple of months or a year
Right.
to do that.
Which
and
is
we
our
have-
system.
Which is just our system.
Yeah.
We need to make the system better. We got to get rid of those fifth-year seniors, not get rid of them.
Well,
Meaning we have to focus on how we can make them not be fifth-year seniors. And again, Abigail and the site administrators and I have been meeting about this, with getting Lindsay's input with the data prior to knowing that we qualified. And we were already kind of coming up with things that we wanted to do. Part of it, the state actually helped during COVID. They said any student that looks like they're going to be a fifth year, you can waive your local graduation requirements and graduate them with just the state minimum requirements. Bingo. Not every student is going to fall into that category, nor do we want them to, because what we're trying to do is to push them to go on to college. We want them to have the ability to get into a four-year college. That's always been our focus. It's not been our metric because, it's just our focus for the individual kiddos, right? But given who our students are, that's not necessarily, we track it, but it's not necessarily a fair metric. We're not a NAP, UCA through G, push school. But we still want to have those options. However, there are students, and both of them and Lindsay can share lots of stories, there are students that it is better for them to just get out into the world, go to your junior college, be transferable, get them into college, get them into the workforce. Hence our CTE programs are expanding. And Luis's role, Luis Portilla.
he's great, by the way. I spent a good bit of time with him.
Yeah, he's fabulous. He has more than doubled the number of students who are taking concurrent enrollment classes at the JC. So if we can get even more of them to do that while they're a junior and senior and they come to us credit deficient, we can get their big toe wet in the college scene, hence our having the graduations on our junior college campuses. And that is our plan.
It's still frustrating because we can always do better.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. But the mission of the school is to reach out to kids who are going to quit, who weren't going to graduate. So I see every one of these kids that graduate as a win. I've always seen that since I started the school. And and then we're getting dinged. It's like, come on.
We're taking on the
Dr.
hard
Campbell and
ones,
your
and we're
system,
gonna do
you're
that,
doing
yeah.
great work in San Marcos for traditional kids. The kids that fall out of your program, we're trying to pick them up and give them one last chance, right?
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
and then we're held to the same. It's just frustrating
Yeah, it is. It is.
because then one day they'll say, well, we're not going to fund you anymore. Why? You just said no to a bunch of children who were out of luck and we gave them a chance and you just said no to them. That's what's,
But we're not going to turn our back on them. We're coming up, Abigail's drafted this plan to support the kids. Here's our 4 and 5 year graduation rate.
You want me to explain this a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, this is my chart.
Yeah.
So if you guys are looking at like, what the heck? So CSI is a 3-year average. So even though our graduation rates have been increasing steadily year after year, it's the 3-year average. So I took the data from DataQuest for the last 3 years on graduates, the number in the cohort, so how many kids are expected to graduate in 4 years, and then how many actually did, and then how many, expected to graduate in 5 and how many actually did. And I did the average so you could see why we qualified. But I will say, I know the percentages aren't up there, but we've been steadily increasing year after year after year. So there is improvement. It's just a bummer that we can't dig ourselves out from, and that's like COVID times.
COVID's in this, yeah, right, for 2 years.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And the threshold is what, 68? So
68.
We've got a ways to go.
Yeah, we do have a ways to go. And I do think, literally, Kristen in her new role, that they're not officially in, but yes, they are. And Abigail have literally been going through individual students' transcripts and targeting the students that could, with a little bit of work over the summer or even maybe now, avoid being a 5th year. And as we move, we're kind of scrambling right now because it's the end of the school year, and we're implementing new policies that haven't necessarily been completely ironed out. So we're kind of making it up a little bit as we go along. But if it's right for the kid, I'm willing to do that, and we'll finesse it and see how it works over the summer and make it better for next year, or we can catch them at the beginning of the year as they're enrolling brand new and say, okay, what are your goals, and can we, waive some of our community service of 40 hours a year requirements and some of their visual and performing arts requirements that we have way above and beyond the state's requirements, and allow that student to be successful and graduate with their class, given what we can do with them individually to get them through the core content that they have to master, and waive some of the, I don't mean fluffier stuff, because I think the arts are very important. So, comments, questions? Okay. This is just, DAS schools will be looked at a little bit differently, just like everywhere else.
As they should be.
It doesn't change. They're not going to do away with our status. We just get a little asterisk like we do on the dashboard. So.
Okay.
Yeah. And we already talked about that, maximizing how we're redeveloping how we place the students in courses, providing additional supports to students who are not on track to graduate, catching them sooner, and getting them to take more community college classes is in essence what the plan is. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the end. Questions? Okay.
That's it. That was a good report. That was a lot. You guys
A little frustrating. Yeah.
Frustrating. I can tell you're not thrilled with some of this stuff.
No.
Any questions of our executive director? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Gastel. Appreciate that. We'll move on to the LCAP update.
You guys are so excited
Ms.
right now.
Vining. Oh,
So
always.
excited.
This is your final performance. I mean,
Yes.
make it awesome.
I'm just kidding. That's why I did the confetti. So I'm just gonna remind you on our LCAP goals. We're middle of a 3-year cycle. Next year will be the last year of the 3-year cycle. Not a ton of changes because it takes a while, right, for actions to make impact. So you don't want to change things so quickly. You want to see the real impact. So you're not going to see a ton of changes in our actions, but I'm just going to remind you of our goals, our actions, our metrics. And then if you have any questions in relation to what Jana mentioned, just let me know. So these are the goals that we've had for the last few years. And when we met as a leadership team and didn't even talk about the LCAP, and we just like organically discussed same goals. It's like we are who we are, so we're going to keep these for the next couple of years. So we focus on number one, building relationships with families and students. That is the core of what we do to be able to do the other things. And goal one talks about school climate and culture. And you saw in our Bay's presentation all the photos of the things they're doing to build that. And so you're seeing that in action. We have another goal focused on college and career. As Jana said, they're not all going to college, but they all are going to need to join the world, right? And do something. So we're building our CTE program. Luis is amazing, as Chairman Lewis said. So that's goal 2. Goal 3 is our academic achievement, right? We want students to academically achieve similar to their peers, and so we're always focusing on that. And you'll see a lot of our program choices really focus on how can we get students to improve in reading and math, right? That's the one. And then as a reminder, there are 30 or more English learners at Pivot Charter School North Bay, and so we have a separate English learner goal for Pivot Charter School North Bay. It doesn't mean we're not serving our English learners at the other sites. It's just that we've separated the goal for that school.
Mhm.
So these are all the actions that we do, and we've sort of like moved them into their categories, right? For the most part, everything is fully implemented. We have our instructional aids. MTSS is up and running. We have a very robust device program where students are getting Chromebooks and Kajits, which are Wi-Fi hotspots. Like, we are up and running. We provide bus passes to students to be able to get to our centers. We give them one to get here and go home, right? We want them here. All this, we still have student meals, like all this is happening. And then we're still working, in these other areas. English learner curriculum, we started doing that this year, and we even have newcomers to Pivot, which means that they've entered the United States as, I don't know, is it 1 to 2? It's they just are here, and they barely speak English, if any, and so we've really been figuring out how do we serve newcomers in our program, and we have a new, I don't know his official title, but his name's Lucas, and he is amazing. And
English language development teacher.
And so he was hired later in the year, and so we're really ramping up that program.
And he is actually going to be keeping the same curriculum.
And we're still working on CTE development. That's kind of building as we go. We have a new partnership with a building and constructions trades in North Bay. Kind of excited about that, and a focus on women in that career. So you'll hear about that next year.
So on that, sorry,
Yeah.
I have a very good friend that works for. He's like executive vice president of Launa, which is a really big building and trades union up here. And he would love to be involved in our schools, help with funding, outside funding. I meant to tell you about this the other day.
Great. We just got a grant here locally, but we need to cover the other schools. And
so remind me to talk to you about that.
Okay.
Launa is a really big labor international union of North America. So it's really big.
That's great. And also we have guest speakers who talk to the kids about ideas and careers that they never heard of. So even getting that off the ground is really amazing.
We also initiated this year, and you'll hear more about it next year, Microsoft training as part of our CTE path, which again, we can do pivot wide at all 4 pivots, no matter where the teacher is, because it's online anyway. And then the trade, and then we're looking at a vet science in San Diego and Riverside, because the kids, it was a return. So working with Teresa on that.
And if you have any questions about the CT pathways, it's a big undertaking because you have to make a lot of connections in the community, as you just mentioned. We're a small school with a small population, and so even if only a handful of kids are taking it, it's really valuable for them.
So guess what? That's a great way to use board members.
Yeah.
What? Your board members represent your communities? Oh my gosh, you could use our networks to do that so you don't have to.
That'd be awesome.
You gotta be kidding me.
We have finance.
Why do I get the feeling I'll be hearing this later?
Yeah.
Small business. There we go.
There you go. All right.
Just so you know, the grant that we got was through the Lime Foundation here locally for this construction grant, on which the board is seated Ms. Karen Grotti. Karen Grotti.
Yeah, I know Karen. Yeah, really?
She's on the board. That's how we learned about it.
Oh, that's cool.
That's Kareen's wife.
Yeah, wife. Yeah.
So yes.
We know Karen Grotti. She's
Yes, we love
all
her.
celebrity.
Yes, she is.
She is.
It's awesome.
So
She is a wife of our dean of students, basically.
you met Kareen, yes.
She's awesome,
Yes.
and
Yes.
her wife is like the realtor in this area.
Okay.
She
She's
knows
a
everybody.
Yes.
She's a
She's
celebrity.
the celebrity.
She is
She's
awesome.
You see her on the
Don't
signs.
go out to a
Okay.
restaurant with her because
Oh,
she's like,
awesome.
kissing baby, shaking head. You can't even get down the aisle.
She's the best.
Okay.
Yes.
So, she's awesome. Yeah, she helped us get that grant.
So we have in the LCAP, it asks you to reflect on your successes, but also identify areas of need or areas for growth. And you do that by looking at data and analyzing your actions and your program. And so these are the areas that we've identified where we can grow. Partnership engagement, like we want our families, our communities, like to tell us what they want, what they need. And sometimes they're like, no, you're doing great. It's like, well, help us, work with us. So we're going to try to increase that. We send out surveys, we talk to them, but we need more. And so that's going to be an area for growth for us. Attendance is, Ms. Gaffel spoke to, we're going to try to improve our attendance every school day, right? Students come to us and like, sweet, it's an online school, which clearly well,
Kind of.
we're a school. Yeah. And they think, oh, I'll just do it whenever. And it's like, no, you have to go to school every day. And so we're continually messaging that. And then having an attendance clerk is going to help because they're going to be making phone calls. They're going to be, right? So we're going to work on our attendance. Graduation rates, as we spoke to, those are increasing in our college and career indicator. It wasn't reported this year, but I anticipate next year it's going to be very much improved thanks to all Luisa's efforts. And then professional development. Like we're always trying to figure out what do our teachers, what do our instructional staff need to know, want to know. We're continually finding ways to engage them and motivate them in new areas. And so we did a lot of trauma-informed care after COVID came out. That was really big. A lot on English learners, right? So we're trying to identify what professional development do we need to continue with. And we're doing this all the time. You never stop. You're never all fully done. You're always learning. So you'll always see that. We'll always be doing that. And then English learner development, as I spoke to, we have newcomers this year. They're not speaking any English. They're in a program, brand new to the country. And then also we want to get our students reclassified, right? And in order to do that, we need them to engage. They're an independent study. So doing a designated program to get them to learn more English can be challenging. So we're trying to tackle that.
Well, and Lucas will also be working on integrated instruction, which means how do we use our curriculum to help the students who are EL, and because that's our classroom, right? The online curriculum is like a classroom, and so it's a funky little mix. But we only have about 50% of our students attending the designated classes for EL, and I think with him in charge now, and now that he knows the curriculum, I think that's going to change. I mean, he's working with me over the summer. We have a plan. He's got some summer work. He's going to be putting all of the EL curriculum into the platform our kids currently use, the Buzz platform, but he's also going to be working with me on a plan to re-engage our EL students. And actually our newcomers left.
Oh.
They've withdrawn. They withdrew.
All of them?
Yeah, all of them are gone. But it was not because of our lack of curriculum, because we went and we were bending over backwards to help these kids. It was just their situations where there was only 3 of them.
I know, but it's just weird that we got them all in 1 year. Super weird.
I know, we never
had any
newcomers,
before.
but they've all withdrawn. So, but we need to make sure we have a newcomers curriculum to serve them and designated instruction for them as well. So.
Yeah, I'm going to. So what are we doing to achieve our actions? Like I said, this is a 3-year cycle. We're not going to just change things. We want to make sure we're improving what we've already invested in. And so these are the same actions that you've seen before. And then as a reminder, goal 4 is for North Bay, but we do move these actions into goal 3 for the other 3 schools. We're not abandoning the English learners at the other schools. They're just going to be in the 3rd goal. There just aren't very many of them. It would be silly to have a separate goal for the other sites because a lot of the data doesn't get reported if your groups are so small. So we wouldn't have data there. So we just move them into goal 3. We've talked about all of those things. And so we have some new actions. These aren't going to be specifically in the LCAP because the LCAP is not very, you're not this specific mostly. I mean, attendance clerk is in there, but these are the ones that you guys will see like in action. And so Pivot Pride, for example, teaching students directly behavior and social emotional skills, like actually teaching them how to make friends, teaching them how to appropriately engage in school.
One of the things for PD, because we're still not in full implementation on professional development, that the counselors were looking at, and Liz and I met with them last week to finalize how to implement restorative practices, restorative justice practices, and getting students engaged in taking ownership. And so that's one of the PD things we'll be doing, and re-engaging the kids, and also offering professional development opportunities for our teachers over the summer and next fall to learn about it and start implementing it as well. So again, trying to get the kids more engaged, right? If you get them engaged, you can get them in front of you. If you can get them talking about their lives and their, to their teachers, it all helps with graduation and chronic absenteeism and student performance, right? So.
And these are all, under the umbrella of things we've always been doing. We're just making them better. We're going to, improve our communication. We're going to improve access to professional development opportunities. We're tracking our CTE more closely, and also the community college classes, tracking them. Like, we have a list of who they are, but what are their grades? Where are they going next? Like, there's no real system for that. Schools, I'm sure Dr. Campbell can speak to that. The kids just go for away from you, and you don't know what you have to call and ask. Like, there's no system, although they are working on Cradle to Career, if I don't know if you know that, but where they eventually will be able to look up a kid and go, oh, they went to that college.
Yeah.
But right now we have no idea. So there's nowhere to look. I know. And then they're like, track your kids, and you have that 20,000 or whatever. So, but it's
Okay.
yeah.
Get on that, will you?
Yes.
Get on that.
So, but we're small. We can do that. Luis can make a phone call.
Yeah.
Where did you end up? Are you in a career? Did you graduate from that?
We could have all at the graduation written down what the kids were doing. They all said what they were doing.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we keep. Yeah.
Which is why we have the ECs do that now and ask
Right,
them what they're doing.
right.
But who knows? Some of them are
Yeah,
just kind
they
of
may
making
not
it
do
up
it.
on the
Right,
fly.
right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, but small and nimble allows us to do that, which is nice. And then these are the metrics. How do we measure the achievement? We added a lot more metrics to the LCAP this year. You're probably like, the LCAP's even bigger. We work closely with Riverside County Office of Education. They have a whole charter unit that provides guidance, and we appreciate them greatly. They know exactly, what they're doing. They're very on top of it, and so they provided some guidance to us from our LCAP from last year. And some of the suggestions were to add additional metrics. So if you're going, why are there so many? We've been advised to include them. And a lot of these come from the state data quest or California School Dashboard. Others are internal metrics. So there's a lot of data there.
They're a great partner. They really are.
Yeah.
Riverside County Office. They really,
So supportive. We've really appreciated it.
They're the third largest county in the state, so they kind of
didn't know
have
that.
they're kind of have their thing down.
but they're just so, even like in
Well, Dr. Loomis.
Dr. Loomis's annual presentation, and they're really good.
Yeah.
And
Aside from that second financial system, right, Liz?
Yeah.
They're really
That
good.
So we do our surveys. We do our surveys every year, right? And we do multiple surveys throughout the year to make sure we're on track. And this year we also did a lot of behind the scenes to try to figure out if certain subgroups were of families, maybe families that have English learners, if they're answering differently on surveys than other families. And so we're really trying to
aggregate it.
Yes, thank you. And so these are just 4 questions on the survey. Curriculum satisfaction, that is the classroom, that is the school, the online curriculum. We want to make sure that it's engaging, that they feel like they're learning, and you'll see that people are generally very satisfied or just satisfied in general. I'm always impressed when people are extremely satisfied. I'm like, wow!
Because even that's like a cultural thing, right? People will say, I'm satisfied. That's as good as you get.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get extreme. It's like a weird, like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, culturally, it's satisfied.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then academic achievement. We want people to feel, that they're having academic achievement here, and they're agreeing.
Great.
And this is like,
That's significant, though. You look at everything's on the right.
Yes. And this is the one we've been working on. This has been improving steadily. People didn't really see us as a school preparing their kids. They were just like, give me a diploma.
We were a stopgap. Yeah.
Yes.
How my kid.
For a long time, people saw Pivot as like, just get that diploma and get me out of here. But now we're going, no, we want to actually prepare you for beyond high school. And that message is finally kind of hitting.
Awesome.
And so, now with, we have Luis, we have the CTE programs. They're saying, oh, I have to actually think now beyond high school while at high school.
Significant.
And like we talked about earlier, we're
Mhm.
catching the kids who don't even
That's
think they're going to
great.
graduate at all. So we're taking it 2 steps forward. Not only are you going to graduate, but we're going to help you prepare for the next step. And so this is one we've been keeping an eye
Those
on.
are really good results compared to what we had.
It's improved
Yeah.
quite a
Wow.
bit. Yes.
And then overall satisfaction, right? How satisfied are you with the school?
Look at that. Wow.
And there's always, grumpy people. So we have comments. So we just look at
Always
the comments.
grumpy people. Dr. Campbell noticed that San Diego does
I
not
just
register in
said-
any
I
of the
just
underwhelming.
said that-
Make sure you know.
I did
None,
say
none.
yellow looks great.
There's none. Yellow is like,
looks great.
just saying. And these are the challenging kids.
I know. Listen, put that in your renewal.
Amen.
Our renewal, for
Love
sure.
it.
Did you hear that, Jasmine? Renewal.
So we love student comments, and I copied and pasted straight. So spelling, grammatical errors, and all are in. This is true to them. A lot. I read through them all. A lot of nice. The teachers are nice. The school cares about me. That was an overwhelming theme in the
That's
great.
That's
I
Working
love
with
that
teachers.
last one. You can do it, so don't give up.
Oh yes.
I know.
Pivot push the narrative. That's good work. You can do it.
That's like well written. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smart kid.
Encourages me to keep going, helps me with my problematic areas in school.
Wow.
So they feel supported, they feel cared about. That's
Awesome.
our number one goal. That's our goal number one, literally, in the LCAP is school culture, feeling cared, feeling welcome at our school. I feel welcomed by staff. They are nice. And so we're overwhelmingly achieving this, like without
Lets
a
you
doubt.
have a say in your future. I've
Yes.
never had a voice in. Wow.
And you
that's-
heard that from the kids in the
I
North
know.
Bay
It's
video,
just wonderful
which is
to
just
see.
awesome. We were joking, but Travis wasn't coaching them; he was just asking them questions, and that's what our kids feel about
Yeah,
Pivot,
we
so.
give them hope. A couple of years ago, I went to the North Valley, and she said, one student said, I just thought I was going to work at McDonald's.
That's great.
So it's like we're giving them hope for their future. And then the parents and guardians comments. So some of these will make some changes, right? I would like a parent-teacher meeting face-to-face.
Yay!
Look at
Get
that.
that parent
Great.
Yeah.
Like they knew. Pre-recorded lectures. We're going to move in that direction already. So it really helps us understand that we're going in the right direction. The curriculum videos being outdated, we're on top of that. Now we don't write the curriculum, so we communicate very regularly with the curriculum vendors. And they make changes based on my strongly worded emails. And so, love Pivot, love the people that work there. Thanks for working hard to keep my child working toward her diploma. This one about advanced class options in middle school. All right, thank you for that. We don't know unless you tell us. So we can promote that more now. And this one's really common that we hear verbally is relieving the stress and anxiety that they have in the more traditional environments, or something bad happened and they feel they have somewhere to go that is a new start.
Put those in the charter renewal.
Dr.
Campbell
agrees.
We have San
Yes.
Diego specific ones, and
Yes.
Bay specific ones, but both students and parents.
That's great.
So
Yeah, so I think that's my last slide, right? Great. Any questions?
Awesome.
That's awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your years of service, Lindsay.
Oh, yes. I should have brought my
I'm very grateful. You did a great job.
Yes, I've learned, I can't even begin to tell you what I've learned. And I'm in the admin services program right now, right, for administrative services credential. And I'm in a cohort and they're everyone's always amazed, and I always thank Pivot in the situation that I'm in. I wouldn't ever be where I'm at.
Thank you.
Guys, I appreciate it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, where's the money?
Yeah.
We paid for
How
all
do we
this.
pay for this,
Do we
right?
pay for all this, Liz?
Uh-uh.
Well, the good news is everything that you just heard about is in the budget for you. All of those items. Okay.
Can we pay for this?
All right. So as usual, we discuss multiple fiscal years. We'll do a quick recap on our current forecast update for this year, and then talk about the budget, which is up for review and approval in a couple weeks. So enrollment and attendance, we have our P2 attendance numbers that we reported to the state. This is the attendance that was reported as of April 15th-ish is usually the cutoff, as close as we can get to April 15th. And so these numbers are
308.
Mostly final. We often make adjustments at the end of the year if there's anything that gets corrected. But this is very a good approximation of what will drive our primary funding for this school year. So at North Bay, you can see we had the orange line is the attendance rate. So we did have a bit of a dip in the beginning of the year, but have recovered fairly nicely from that, and enrollment has stayed strong. And if you recall, we also had some staffing issues this year, so we could have had more students enrolled at North Bay because we did have a significant wait list, but we didn't have the staff to serve them for the whole year. So we did have to keep that wait list, and we're only able to take more students as students left or graduated and things like that. So that will be a little bit important when we talk about the budget for next year, because we are hoping to be able to staff up and serve more of those students who were on the wait list this year. For North Valley, we had attendance declining, but enrollment and ADA going up. This is representative of kind of their traditional pattern. North Valley is one of our schools that tends to get a lot more enrollment in second semester. And we've been trying to push that earlier so that we can, retain those students and have a more consistent enrollment throughout the year instead of kind of having to see this spike. And oftentimes when the enrollment goes up, attendance rate does go down a bit, especially in second semester when you have students who have already been struggling, and it takes them a while to get used to independent study and kind of learn how to be a pivot student. San Diego attendance rate has always been high, which is great. The real issue here that we're hoping to kind of work on over the summer with our marketing and communications and student recruitment is just overall enrollment. Has been a struggle this year. However, their P2 ADA for this year is very close to North Valley. So North Valley's was 80.43 and San Diego is 80.13. So very, very similar sides when it comes to the ADA. And then Riverside has also had some growth this year. Similar to North Valley, got more students in the second semester, especially once we had the staffing to be able to serve those. I believe we did also have a wait list briefly at Riverside, and they've continued to have strong numbers.
There is incredible energy there. Having to spend time with parents and students and the faculty, I mean, wow, Riverside is really, boys, it is incredible.
Yeah. The
energy that I felt on Wednesday, really something.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of that is we're finally seeing the results of the things that we would have seen if it hadn't been for COVID. We have our new site, our team, kind of expanding there and kind of, reassessing what the priorities are and really hitting the ground running. But during COVID, everything was virtual and, it wasn't as visible, I think.
Yes,
and
I totally agree.
site
All
and
the plans
everything.
we had when we were building the site during COVID, we knew we were right. It just didn't click for what you said. You can see we're trading. I bet you this is gonna be 200 in the fall easily. Yeah.
So their re-enrollment numbers are looking strong, and I think we're finally seeing the fruits of the new site and the location and the visibility of it.
100%.
Yeah, and the team there, as you say, just great positivity, great energy. So overall by site, average attendance rate about 85%. We do want to get that up. That is overall for all students, and as we mentioned earlier, chronic absenteeism is anything below 90%. This is an average of all students, so it's not quite the same as the metric that goes into chronic absenteeism, but we do want to get all of our rates up above 90%. So
San Diego has always been our strongest attendance rates.
Yes.
And it has nothing to do with the size of the school. Even when they were 160 kids, their attendance rates were the strongest. So anyway, and they have different practices that they do there that we should, take a look at implementing elsewhere as well. So
how does this impact the forecast? So with our ADA reporting, the P2 reporting, the good news in the big green bar is that the mix of attendance across different grade spans was a bit more favorable. We tend to do the forecast a bit conservatively and project, with enrollment, we sometimes don't know if it's going to be elementary or middle school or high school. So we tend to project a little conservatively with a larger proportion in the grade spans that have lower funding levels. So then when we actually have the data that comes through, in this case this year, we did have more students in the grade spans that were higher funding rates. So that's where that bump comes from. The big dip bar on the right
clawback.
is the clawback.
I didn't know government knew to clawback. But
We will talk about this in future slides.
Yuck.
And this is current year.
You have one of those too?
Oh, yes.
Current
Oh.
year. Yes, this
Oh,
is
yes.
a big hot button issue
Oh.
about May
Yes.
revise.
Is that state
Um,
money?
They're not gonna stick with this.
We'll
Oh,
talk
you
about
think
it.
this is
We'll
happening?
talk about it.
This hasn't
No,
happened.
This is
they
what
said-
It's
they-
in
this
the
is
May
May
revise, right?
Yes,
So
this was the
in
governor.
general,
Huh.
we
They're out
plan
of
our
money.
budget based on the governor's May revise.
You should.
As is common practice. And there is a proposal
$40 billion
that will
deficit tends to
claw
claw
back
back.
money
That's right.
Mhm.
that was, basically appropriated a year ago
Huh.
in June of 2022 and July of 2022.
Literally
They said
taking
for-
money back from this
this
year
school year.
now.
This is
At
a
the
gimmick.
end of
They'll probably appropriate this on July 1 of 20 or whatever.
It's-
Who
yeah,
knows?
no,
But it's
it-
real. You're not going to get it in August, so you got to look at it.
And I actually have some updates that are not on this slide, but about what the Assembly and the Senate.
You
have
can
been
probably book
proposing.
this as an account receivable, but you don't want you can't.
I think they're going to
Pay
basically reject the governor's proposal.
Yeah,
or modify
legislature's
it and
not
find
gonna-
the money elsewhere. I'm hopeful that that's going to happen. That's what they're trying to do. So overall, it takes us from a
Huh.
slightly positive to a slightly negative, still fairly close to break even considering the size of our budget.
Yep.
So then site by site, very similar, we're still hovering pretty close to break even given the overall numbers. But all sites have gone down a bit and it's largely due to the clawback projection, which we're hoping will not be as bad as the May revise makes it look. The good news is we do have, funding balance that
course.
can absorb that if it does happen. So any questions about this year's current forecast?
And Tom's not here to ask how much cash is actually available.
So Liz, tell us.
Okay, so let's talk about next year in the May revise. So the COLA changed a little bit. The recommended LCFF COLA, statutory COLA, and everything is
Wow, that's big.
similar. But the clawbacks are, so it's mainly the arts, music, and instructional materials block grant and the learning recovery block grant. Our spending plan for those when we had sort of projected we would be using each of those is a little bit different. So we actually had not used any of the arts, music, and instructional materials block grant for this year. We were waiting and going to use it next year. So starting next year. So that's good because that clawback doesn't actually affect us for this year, which is nice, but it does impact next year. This year, we've been using the learning recovery block grant. So the fact that it was slashed so much that's where the clawback comes back,
Got it.
comes into play. Is only the learning recovery block grant in our current year forecast.
It's huge.
A few concerns that have been brought up as well. The governor is proposing to quote unquote fully fund this 8.22% COLA, but using cuts to one-time funds such as the arts, music, and instructional materials block grant and the learning recovery block grant doesn't seem like a sustainable choice. So he's taken a lot of heat, from how can you cut one-time grants to fund something that's ongoing in the structural budget.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of conversations around that and trying to,
You shouldn't be surprised by that.
Talk
You've been in this
sense.
field for
they tell us the
15
same thing,
years.
right?
I mean, come
Don't
on.
use your one-time monies on structural ongoing expenditures,
Right.
and then they're kind of playing the same game. So
Dr. Campbell was saying that San Marcos did the same thing.
We didn't use either
They
one.
didn't use
Yeah.
it one, they put it into
Yes.
next year as
Yeah.
well. So, and part of it's because the ESSER money was running
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah.
So we
So
needed
you-
money, so you
Yeah.
needed money in the
prioritize
future
ESSER first.
to backfill for the
Yeah.
ESSER running out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is very similar to what we've done because it's all the same conversation of tapering off the one-time funds and kind of
As
trying
opposed to the fiscal
Kidding.
cliff,
right.
The fiscal
Yeah.
fiscal
Come
cliff.
on.
It's going to be a fiscal. Somebody said, I think it was from EdTech, that it's an ADA accessible ramp now.
Yes,
So
true.
yeah, so that's what we're hoping for. But yeah, we'll see what happens with the Assembly and the Senate and their joint efforts. They have proposed lots of other little, I don't want to call it nickel and diming, but they say things like, well, what about the zero emissions bus money and the commercial dishwashers and all these other grant programs that, maybe let's do something with those and delay some funding on those rather than slashing money that was already appropriated for this year. So they've been, coming up with lots of modifications to the governor's May revise proposal. But at this point, the May revise is what we put in our budget, so we do have that clawback listed in there. The COLA in the May revise does affect several things. Some of these don't really impact us much because we don't have SB 740 facilities, and we actually don't participate in the official, federal lunch programs or child nutrition programs that require you to have a county health department approved full-on kitchen and all of that. We don't really have the infrastructure for that at our rented facilities or leased facilities. So, but it does affect our LCFF rates as well as state sped and the mandate block grant and things like that. So it does impact a lot of our funding. So this is just showing the breakdown of the clawback. The majority of it is the learning recovery grant, which we had slated for this year that we have been spending. So, and then a smaller portion is for arts, music, and instructional materials. I think the difference ends up being about 200K organization-wide for the arts, music, and instructional materials, and about 250K for the learning recovery emergency block grant. So 250K this year, 200K next year in reductions in these grants. Okay.
So are we actually having to pay that, like write a check to the state? Or are they just not going to give us money in June?
One of them, I can't remember which one.
That's crazy.
One of them has been actually apportioned 50% approximately. I believe it's the arts, music, and instructional. I might be getting it mixed up. So one of them is a learning recovery.
The learning recovery.
Okay. Yeah. So one of them has been apportioned 50%, and it kind of conveniently works out so that maybe they just won't pay us the rest of the 50%.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Which was intended to be apportioned sometime in the near future.
Yeah.
But I believe the arts, music, and instructional materials, they may actually need to set up some vehicle to recollect
Like
those funds.
we write a check.
Yes.
Good luck.
Send us a bill, kind of.
Let's vote no.
So,
No.
Yeah. And there was some talk of making it a reduction from future LCF payments or something like that instead of, sending a bill to everyone and collecting checks.
Well, what if you don't send them the money?
Then they'll take it.
Then they'll
take
future payments.
Or the convenience fee.
Yeah.
You're a banker. You're good at those convenience fees.
It's your resort.
Don't pull me into this. Nice.
Yeah, but we're hopeful that will not happen and that the legislature will come up with some modifications that the governor will be amenable to. I mean, we don't need to get into the politics of it, but as we know, Newsom is hoping to run for president. So I think some of his choices in the May revise are based on that sort of campaigning message and wanting to be in the good graces of certain groups. So. All right.
My breakfast.
Moving on. So our budget assumptions, as I mentioned, we did have a large wait list at North Bay, and we've spoken about this a little bit previously. So we are bumping up our enrollment projection for North Bay because we are staffing up early. So we were hoping to not have a wait list of 100 students like we did this last year. So the enrollment has gone up approximately 50. Or 51 at North Bay.
Are we speaking to the staffing up thing?
I mean,
how are we doing?
Yeah.
Is our compensation help, or we're not?
We made two offers that were already declined here. They took other positions. So we're talking specifically to North Bay. We do have a new employee at Pivot North Valley. They accepted. That would then allow us to use another employee to serve North Bay.
So North Bay is still a challenge staffing up
it still
to get to
remains
that.
Quite a challenge. Yes. So, and I don't know, we just re-upped, right, Brittany? And then, because we just redo the joint ad so that they show up on top. But getting qualified applicants locally is tough. So.
I will say, having met some of the new teachers, there you are,
Travis.
They're good people. I know we've been really struggling to hire people, but in the South, of California, I was really impressed at these people. So I hope that when you meet some of the teachers, you'll be impressed too. I think you've hired really good people, but I'm sorry to hear that we're still struggling here, because to meet that goal, we think we can do that.
Well, and so what we
A wait list is a shame.
You
Those
know,
are
we've
dreams
gone
we're
to
not.
a pivot-wide model, so we would never have a new teacher serving students at another campus right
Mhm.
away, but we could have our veteran teachers serving students at another campus, so their FTE salary goes to that
Right.
campus. So that's what we did with San Diego this year when they were a little bit under-enrolled, but we had awesome teachers there.
Mhm.
So, Alex Ritz served students in Riverside, as you saw, he was
Right.
at the Riverside
Right.
graduation. He served students in North Bay, so part of his salary is, even though he's a full-time equivalency pivot-wide,
Got it.
only a portion of his salary is assigned to the San Diego because he's serving kids at North Bay and Riverside. So we can hire teachers at other sites where we are getting better applicants, but we really want North Bay. And I know
Of course.
Travis really wants teachers here at North Bay on site. It's culture, it's energy, it's being with the kids.
Get on
it. But if
Run down the street and start screaming, man. You gotta do something.
I'm this far from spinning a sign out front of
Do it.
Get a Gumby's, get a Gumby. So it's not for lack of trying. Abigail and her team and Craig and a few others and Travis have been on most of the interviews. But we will very quickly here decide we will hire at other sites. It's just not ideal. We get great candidates actually in San Marcos area and Riverside. So and North Valley, the one we had. And so that last year we hired somebody for North Valley so that somebody could serve North Bay from, because we have some very experienced DCs up in North Valley. But then like 2 weeks before school started, she left education. She's like, yeah, I decided I'm not going to stay in education. So we hope that doesn't happen. That really hurts us. That hurt because that's 30 kids right there that we could not take. 2 weeks before school started, we were like, okay, and that started that whole spiral of the wait list.
Right.
So it was hard. So we're working on it, but so is the rest of the country. I mean, how are you on staffing? What are you understaffed now?
It's special ed that continues to be our big issue. We can't staff it. Other areas we're okay. Like we have done a bounce back with elementary this year. We are way fewer secondary teachers way fewer candidates than we used to have, but we are still able to fill. But special ed, we have had a year where we have had substitutes in because we can't get them. We can't get them filled.
And that's why we had those huge contracts. We
Which
had
we'll
to go,
see on the
which we'll
consent
see.
agenda.
It was huge, the contracts to, because that's the bummer with special ed is it's mandatory and you have mandatory
Right.
caseloads and you have to serve them.
Right.
It's not like you can have a wait list of special ed kids
Right.
like you can for general ed.
Huh.
So we hired those, the companies to serve the kids and they're expensive as heck and certainly not ideal. Although I must say in the end, the majority of the individual people that served our kids with those companies were pretty good people. So.
Yes.
Okay.
So North Bay is the only site that we're projecting any kind of increase in enrollment because it's the only site we have current sort of
Wait list,
data that points to.
I think Riverside is going to be our wonderful surprise, but I think for
Could be,
budgeting
yes.
purposes, you're right.
Yes, I'm also hopeful about Riverside's enrollment. Their re-enrollment is very strong. I think they're already at 130 or something. So they're getting close. And then obviously ESSER and state one-time funds kind of, balancing the tapering off of those. And it will be impacted, of course, by whatever happens with the actual budget and those one-time grants that were supposed to be able to be spent this year. But they do have spending timelines going several years in the future. So adjusting those as we move forward is definitely in the cards. So site by site for next year, apologies, it's a little small, but we are projecting, a roughly break-even year. All the numbers being, slightly positive or slightly negative, just based on the actual, needs at those sites, and it could go either way. We'll see, especially if the arts, music, and instructional materials block grant gets restored to what its prior amounts were, or at least even somewhere in between. But overall, a pretty break-even projection. And then as we look at the pivot-wide organizational budget, very similar for the next few years, slightly negative this year, slightly positive for the next two. When we get out into 24, 25, at this point, we do have a slightly larger negative operating income projected. But again, it's 3 years out, so a lot can change between now and then. But at that time, especially as the one-time sources of grant money, especially related to COVID, are all falling away, we'll need to have just another look at the size of our sites, what the enrollment looks like at that time, and take a look at the sustainability of individual sites and what can we do. But obviously, over the next 3 years, we'll be taking a lot of efforts to try to address those things that we already know may be an issue. Having a school with less than 100 students is not ideal. So we'll be working to try to increase the enrollment, marketing, communications, things like that, especially at North Valley and San Diego, since there are two smallest schools. So if we can increase the enrollment there, that out year number will start looking much better. But we didn't want to put anything in the budget. We got to see the proof in the pudding before we do anything in the budget. Just a couple other quick summary things. We did get our funding determinations approved, 2 for 2 years, 1 for 4 years. And that was exactly what we had expected. 2 of our schools had special circumstances due to some interesting revenue recognition that the state requires us to count loan forgiveness as revenue. So the calculations were not what we would have in a normal year. But they got approved. We're all good there at 100% funded for our funding determinations. As you know, we've made significant progress on our development of compensation structures, pay schedules, things like that. And the budget that we're proposing does include, all of those adjustments that have been discussed and planned out in the labor negotiations sessions. Next steps, obviously, we'll see what happens with the actual state budget that gets passed. I'm hopeful that the clawbacks will be either reduced, maybe not eliminated, but hopefully at least reduced. We'll see. And then, as we wrap up the fiscal year and look ahead to all of our restricted spending and the one-time, sources, kind of planning out our last few years of tapering off of those. And then, of course, the await charter renewal bill news is now
Official.
Basically official. So once the governor signs it, it'll be, looking at next steps. How does that impact our current charters? Which does it apply to? Are any of them outside the window? Things like that. So we may come back with a resolution like we did with the last one for you all to acknowledge these are the charters that it applies. This is their new, charter term end dates and things like that.
So is it saying it may push all charters back a year, or just ones that are
There's a certain
due?
time window. Like the last one was all charters whose term expires between this date and this date will be extended by 2 years.
Mhm.
So this new one, I believe, is similar. There's a time and it's extended by 1 year. I haven't looked into the
I think
details.
I think it's just those that are coming up for renewal next year get an additional year. I think it's really simple.
Okay, so
They really
it
watered
doesn't
it
affect
down.
North Bay and Riverside at all?
I don't think so, but I don't know. I haven't seen the final bill. I didn't
Yeah.
get it because I was traveling.
Yeah, so that's on the, next steps issues. We need to confirm whether it affects our other schools that are not up for renewal next year, but the year after. I don't know enough of the details about the nitty gritty of the time periods, but we will definitely look into that. And if there's any board action that's needed, we'll put that on a future agenda. I believe that's
it.
That is it, yeah.
So, questions, board members? Questions? Okay, looks very prudent. And thank you to you and Pat, our finance committee, for a lot of your work on this, Ralph. I know the finance committee has been very active. I'm very grateful for that. And Dr. Campbell, we're so grateful you're here. We've said that a few times, but I mean, just even so you can see us and we can learn from you.
Absolutely.
And you're welcome every time. So thank you. And just even like on the strategy of reapplying and your encouragement that you should do that. I mean, that is really important for us to hear. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
So
Go ahead.
Gina, I just say, please communicate with us regarding what's going on with staffing, because I think that's a big part of our budget and it matters a lot. So
I will.